I had to first realize what I was doing that was giving you a negative about me, that I didn't love
Perception, yeah.
you or had no care about you. That for me was hard. I'm like, oh, how could that even happen? But I had
Right.
to look at myself. Well, how have I been responding? How have I been available? How have I nurtured this relationship? Especially we're family, and to me, a family is should be a close relationship. I know it's not for everybody, and I'm still working on some of those areas of my family that have kind of slipped away. But I desire to have that closeness again. So that was the first thing, and that was me, because I get to control how I respond to my family members, the people that God has put around my life, my friends, my neighbors, whatever. So that's just about me. I can't expect everyone else to change so that
Right.
I can like them or interact with them or whatever. So that was the first thing, was figuring out how I was putting off a vibe that was not approachable. And that was hard for me to realize.
Wow, it's Monday. Hey, everybody, it's Tina Frank. Welcome to Splintered Grace. I am a mature conservative Christian here to have
Hmm.
a conversation with the beautiful Bonnie Violet. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining us.
it's actually Thursday,
Is it
but
Thursday? Oh my
but that's
gosh. See, I
okay.
don't know it. Did I say Monday? I
You
said Monday.
did. We
That's
used to do
hilarious.
Mondays all the time,
We used to
so
do Mondays. Okay.
we
So
did. And hi,
that's so
everyone.
funny.
I'm Bonnie Violet. I'm a transgender queer spiritual drag artist and digital chaplain. Your daughter's on.
Oh,
Hi,
yay.
Charlie.
Hey, Charlie.
How's it going? Glad you could join us. Thanks, everyone who joined us today. I'd love for you to say hello.
And for knowing
Um,
what day of the week it is.
oh, and Erin's here. Hey, Erin, how's it
Hey,
going?
Erin.
So great
That's
to
funny.
see you on here. We were talking about the topic that you suggested at the end of our last episode on hope and hopelessness. And so we titled today's Hope in a Hopeless Time. And so we're going to talk a
Mm,
little bit about, um, I guess, hopelessness, experiencing hopelessness.
yeah.
How do you cope with hopelessness? Maybe how do we get out of hopelessness? And kind of go from there. How do you cope with
Yeah.
hopelessness? So, Aaron says, awesome. Thank you.
Well, thanks
All
for the
right.
topic.
I know you and we were chit-chatting, and we were like, so who's going to start this out? And then
Yeah,
I don't think we actually like figured that out, huh?
we didn't.
How's your week been?
uh,
Marcus, Marcus
oh,
says, hello.
hey,
Hey,
Marcus. So
Marcus.
good to hear from you.
So glad you could join us. Oh, and look, and then there's Liz. Hey,
Hey,
Liz.
hey.
And Charlize says this is a great topic. So I know you, for folks, I am reading the comments just partially so that Tina doesn't have to deal with glasses and the light in her eyes and the
Yeah,
reflection and all that stuff. So
so
it's not
funny.
me just it's not me just hogging up space.
That's funny. Yeah, the reflection in my glasses from the lighting just it bugs me sometimes. So I appreciate you
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah, it's no problem.
So if I'm squinting or whatever, that's what's happening.
Right.
Anyway, I had a fabulous week this week. Um, I got to spend some time with some friends. I've made my first sushi ever, and it turned out edible. It was awesome. I
Mm,
feel like it's one of those things that I've always wanted to do, but I was kind of intimidated to do. And so that was a lot of fun. I got to spend time with my grandkids this week, which was amazing. I got to see my two of my daughters this week, also amazing. I love to hang out with my kids and grandkids. So I've had a really good week.
that sounds like a really great week.
Yeah, yeah.
A really great week. I've had a
So how
pretty
about
good
you?
week.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say, how was yours?
it's been pretty good week for me. I'm in Portland. I've been connecting with some folks, going to some drag shows and meeting up with folks for like at the bars or the shows, and then like I know I said that twice, but and then I'm working on, actually, I was able to secure a venue with one of my friends. So I'm going to be hosting an in-person drag and spirituality event in a bar, which will be my first bar venue, set to happen in like the next 3 to 4 weeks. So I'm currently like doing casting calls and promoting for that event as well. And I know last week we talked about last week was prayer, right? Yeah, I think last week was prayer, or at least in the last couple of weeks.
Prayer meditation. We
Yes,
say thoughts
prayer
and
and
prayers. Yeah.
yeah, thoughts and prayers. Yes, and so
Yes.
I do have a friend who's very near and dear to me who has been dealing with COVID this week, and so folks who do pray or light candles like I do, if you want to say a little prayer for my friend that I won't name, but if you'll do that, that would be really great.
Yeah, gosh, I know probably 2 or 3 people right now that are struggling with that. So yeah, prayers would be amazing.
Yeah, it's and for a lot of folks, they're not, like when I was exposed last week, it was with somebody who didn't have a lot of symptoms. This particular friend is dealing with there are symptoms that I'm not, like I'm nervous to hear that they're going through. But I'm sure that it'll all go well. But it's just one of those things.
Yeah, you got to keep hope, right?
Yes.
These are one of those moments. Yeah.
Yeah, way to do that. Way to move it into hope.
Well, these are the times, and when things like this are happening to the people that we care about, and then even more so when it's happening to us. So yeah. So we got to keep the hope. I heard an interesting story this week. Do you mind if I share?
No, go for it.
I was in a Bible study group with a group of women here in my community, and one of the ladies is new. I don't know her very well. Beautiful, beautiful woman, but she was sharing how she had become a Christian or started going to church. And those are two different things, but I guess it was starting to go into church because she was saying that she was feeling pretty hopeless. She was in a relationship, an abusive relationship. She had been married for 21 years to this person. They had adopted 2 children. And so they were she was trying to raise these children in this environment. And she was that person that always put on the happy face. So people around her had no idea the hopelessness she felt, the challenge and the struggle that she and her kids were going through. And her husband had gotten a job transfer, I think she said, and she had moved to a totally another state. So she figured, okay, we can start over. And she was hoping that some of the things that she was experiencing would go away, and they did not. But she had a young lady move in next to her that got relocated because of Hurricane Katrina. So this lady moved in right next door to her, and every day she came over to this woman's house to say something positive to her, to encourage her, and to invite her to church. And she says it's so funny. She says, because every day I would see her, she was always happy and bubbly. This lady lost 2 homes. She lost a business. She had gone through this horrible experience in Texas. Was it Texas? With Katrina, and had to totally move. She had nothing but the clothes on her back, essentially, when she moved to this place. And she was just the most positive person. And she says for 10 years, she did that. She knocked on her door almost every day, said something positive to her, and invited her to church. And she said, I was even to the point where I said, stop inviting me to church. I'm not going to church. I'm not interested in any of that. Just stop it. But the lady, every time, she would always just finagle it in a little bit because they were friends and they hung out together, but she just wasn't interested in that. And it was so funny. Finally, one day she found the strength to get divorced. And she said she think it was because this lady kept showing up with this big old smile and these words of hope for her every single day. She went through a divorce and nobody knew what was happening until the divorce. And so it was like a big wow. And so in that moment after that, she finally looked at this lady when she said, will you go to church with me? She's like, you know what? I think I'm ready. She says, I made it out of this. I can't even believe I made it out of this. She says, I must have had God on my side because he sent an angel every single day to not give up on me, to carry my hope, and to make sure that I always had a word of hope in my life every day. And I thought that was just such a powerful testimony of how people have the ability to encourage people with hope,
Yeah.
even when they're in these devastating. And this lady had no idea what she was going through.
Yeah.
They were neighbors, they were friends. She had no idea what she was going through.
Yeah, it's like that saying where they say you don't know what people are going through, and it's so isn't it kind of surprising how like hopelessness is such a I don't want to label it as like no, I don't want to label it, but I'm going to say it's a pretty strong maybe feeling that is really intense. At least I feel like when I've experienced hopelessness, it's been very just a very intense kind of feeling, and it's amazing how how somebody can be going through that and the people around don't know. Because that's been a lot of my experience too. I think a part of the way you cope with hopelessness is that you put on a good face, you show up anyway, and you try to push your way through. I mean, I think that's one strategy. I think it could probably be debatable about whether or not that's like the greatest strategy. I think that's probably part of what a lot of us experience, and I hate labeling our experience as bad or wrong ever. But in talking about this episode and talking about like how is it that I find hope in a hopeless time, and I think one of the biggest things was talking with someone else about it, like going to someone that I care about, someone that I trust, maybe even a mentor or someone, maybe a spiritual leader, and sharing with them kind of what's going on with me. I always feel like we're only as sick as our secrets, and even things like hopelessness is not one of those I think they're not one of those feelings or those experiences that it's highly stigmatized, and it's not an experience that we want to go through. But I think it's a very common, at least from what I hear.
I agree.
I don't know anyone that's gotten away with not experiencing hopelessness. Hey y'all, it's me again, Bonnie Violet. I just wanted to take a second and thank my Patreon members. Patreon members are folks who contribute on a monthly basis anywhere from $3 to $150 a month to support the work of a queer chaplain. Big shout out to Victoria Thompson, Jason Brandt, Brandon Stanton, Kim Silva, Brandy McCarg, Randy Sandknott, Bob Kaiser, Joey Heckmeister, Violet Rhiannon, Gabriel, Jonathan, Petrick, and Todd Atkins Whitley. Thank you so much for your continued contributions. And if you're interested in joining the Patreon, just check the link in the description. Go to patreon.com/Bonnie Violet. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
And I think there's a lot of things that can trigger hopelessness. We're all different. So based on where we're at in our life, the life experience that we have to the point, and I think things can just trigger hopelessness, because you could be like on point, doing life, enjoying everything that's happening, then all of a sudden this thing comes from left field, and all of a sudden you feel hopeless.
Right.
And it's amazing to me how devastating it can be, and what kind of rabbit trails it can lead you down. That moment of hopelessness can take you down to some really dark places if you let it. And so it's really important, like you said, to reach out to someone. I can't imagine not having someone that I could reach out to, but if you can't, know that there's always I believe that there's a God that's always willing to listen and to guide. Prayer is an amazing thing that can help reset you and help you to find those moments and those times of hope.
Yeah, hopelessness, and it's so easy to say when we're not in the hopelessness to say talk to someone about it, and because we all know that that's like the most difficult time for us to to really do that, to talk with someone else about that. But I think hopelessness, like most of our emotions or most of the things that we experience, that's information. So I feel like there's some sort of message that is trying to get to me. and
Mm.
sometimes I feel like that can come from my body, that could be coming from my mental health, that could be coming from a lot of different
Yeah.
places. And it might be a little wonky, but it's still coming at me. And now I can be like, okay, I have this hopelessness, and how do I, like, what is it trying to tell me? Are there changes I need to make in my life? Are there
Mm.
relationships I need to get out of? Are there jobs I need to
Yeah.
end?
Yeah.
Are there jobs I need to look for? Do I need to move? Or, and the other thing I wanted to bring up too, which we won't spend a lot, I don't think, necessarily talking about, but like mental health, and we're not mental health, providers. We talk
No,
more
not
about
at
the
all.
spiritual stuff. And sometimes to me, I think it's hard to know if what we're dealing with is spiritual or mental. There is a distinction, but I think they often come together. And so I think maybe one of the people to talk to is also a mental health provider, if you're able to access that sort of service so they can help assess to see if there's something more chemically going on, or something that's more I think physiological. Like it's not in our mind,
Yeah.
not in our mind and our spirit, but kind of in our body in some way, chemically. And that there might be some sort of way that, because sometimes it might just be, just a little, you're dealing with some depression that is, showing up as hopelessness. And maybe if you're able to treat that depression, the hopelessness could be less. I don't know, like, again, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
like, I'm not telling people what to do, but I know that I've benefited from being on antidepressants, and praying to God, and having a strong spiritual like connection with God does not necessarily stop me from from experiencing depression.
Mm.
Like, and so I think it's, at least for me, I have to
Yeah.
call out all
Yeah.
the troops. I have to call out all the troops.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Aaron has a comment.
Okay.
Aaron says, it's so important that people know that reaching out to a mental health provider is not a weakness.
I agree.
Agreed.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree.
Yep. And I think that's also like, Charlie also says mental health is key, but the question I have maybe for you, or maybe for the listeners, is like, in response to what Aaron is saying, about reaching out to health providers is not a weakness. I guess part of it is how do we receive that message? How do we receive when we get word from somebody that they're experiencing hopelessness? Is there something
Okay.
you could riff off that?
Well, I know how I like to respond to those folks. Well, I always try to encourage them first, because sometimes I think when we're in the middle of hopelessness, at least when I've experienced feeling hopeless, I've forgotten who I am.
Mm.
And because if I can lose sight of that, then I think I can start to believe negative things, even if they're not true about myself. No matter if someone says them to me or even not, I just kind of think them in my head that someone has a thought about me that's probably not even true. And so the first thing I try to do is to encourage someone and remind them that they're amazing, remind them that they have a purpose, remind them that they were created in a beautiful image, remind them that they're powerful and bold and have the ability to be whoever they want to be. So I always try to start with the place of encouragement. And based on how they respond and how we interact at that point will determine my next steps.
Right.
And then I try to stay connected as much as they'll allow me to. Another thing I've learned is if someone comes to me, a lot of times they're not as open. And I don't know if it's because they're been hurt before. And so a lot of times it'll mean that I may have to be intentional about a little bit of a pursuit so that they're not just left adrift somewhere. I think that's a problem. We have a conversation and we encourage them and we feel like the conversation went well, but then when they don't reach out to us again, we don't follow up. And so I try to make it a point to be intentional about that. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
I just checking in. So that's my best starting point, I think, when I'm talking to someone who's expressed that to me. And then, of course, I pray for them every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Yeah, I think sometimes in the past I think one thing to kind of remember too, is that my job isn't to fix them in that moment,
Right.
and I can't fix them. And I think when I can recognize that, then I don't get nervous about hearing that information from someone and not knowing what to do with it. Sometimes it is just about holding space for them. It's just
Hmm.
about listening to them. If you know somebody well enough, you might be able to point to certain things or know how to respond to them because they've spoken with you about their hopelessness before in the past. But so I think there's not like one size fits all, but I think oftentimes it's like, oh, I'm gonna listen, try to normalize I don't, it's like it's so hard because I feel like you need to let people have their own experience with it. So like if you generalize it too much, then it can feel like you're dismissing my experience because it's what everyone
Yeah.
else has. So I think it's a fine line, and oftentimes, it's about trying to hold space and asking maybe if there's something you can do. Like what is it that I could do for you to help you during this time? And then
Yeah.
whatever it is that they ask you to do that. Whether it's they might ask you to pray for them, they might ask you to can you check in with me?
Yeah.
Can we call every morning and or maybe get coffee once a week or like whatever those sorts of things also might be ways to ask I don't know ways to be in conversation with somebody who is experiencing
I, I think
hopelessness.
I think you really hit a target there. Something that I think we're doing, but we're not always doing. And I catch myself doing this all the time. And I is listening. I
Mm,
want to listen. I have a desire to listen, but sometimes I don't always listen. I
yeah.
hear what you're saying, and I'm so busy trying to figure out what I'm going to say in return that I don't really hear what you're saying. You know what I mean? And so I think being able to listen to someone, to truly listen to them and hear their heart in a hopeless situation, I think that gives you the opportunity then to encourage them or go to that next space where you were just
Hmm.
talking about. Can we stay connected? Is there anything that I can do for you? But I think I know some of the times when I'm feeling hopeless and I think hopeless can be in different levels in our lives. I'll give you an example. I lost a dear friend recently, and I struggled just like people do when they lose people that are close to them. And I didn't feel like there was anyone I could call. I called and talked to. I tried to reach out, but all they did was compare my situation to a situation that they had experienced, and that was the end of the conversation.
Mm,
There was no, I don't know, connection point, I guess is the best way.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, so I was like, all right, I'm not going to let this get me going down a woe is me kind of a thing because that's not what it was about.
Mm.
I just wanted to share a moment with someone.
Were you
So
able
that
to?
happened when I got to when I went to the memorial service, and that was an amazing time. I don't know, and the people that are close to you that knew what you're going through and that didn't take the time to check in on you.
Mm, yeah.
So, there's different levels of hopelessness, and I'm learning that no matter how much or where we're at, we're going to have those moments, but really being able to learn to be a good listener when the people around you are having those moments,
Mm,
I think can give us an opportunity to help them to not go down those rabbit holes and get lost in that hopelessness. Because there's a lot of choices that I could have made in any of those situations. I could
mm,
choose to be frustrated with those people. I could choose to think, well, you don't love me. You didn't even bother to reach out to me. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But I'm not going to do those things because I know those people love me.
Yeah.
So I think there's the key in all this. I'm sorry, I took the long story down to is listening and being sensitive to the people around us. And I
Yeah.
think that can be very helpful.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And oh, I wish you know, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. My heart goes out to you. And I was like, where was I? What was I doing? Um, gotta check myself. But I know that wasn't what it was about, so I don't want to take away
Nope, it
from that.
certainly was not. Yeah.
So Aaron had mentioned, I think it's important to know listening to and being present with someone is the most important thing,
Yes.
and fixing the situation for them is often not possible.
That's true.
And Charlie also added, it took me a while to admit that to myself. That, yeah. Yes. Yeah. And hopelessness, I mean, I think that also kind of what comes up with what you mentioned too. It's like, how do you, I guess we talked also about hopelessness being not noticeable, but oftentimes I
Yeah.
think hopelessness isn't seen. So maybe there are, I mean, I don't know if there are like indicators. I think part of it is just knowing people well enough to know. Maybe asking more questions around certain situations could kind of help check in on some of that stuff, because I think sometimes people just aren't going to, offer
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah, and I mean people are living their lives, aren't we all? I mean, we talk about how we want to be productive or fruitful in our lives, and I think sometimes in that fruitfulness we sometimes aren't aware of what's happening around us.
Yeah,
And I think and we give them the moment that we've scheduled, or the moment that whatever, but after that there's not a second thought. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just
right.
saying that as we're doing life, I think we need to, I don't know, just be more sensitive to those. I call those promptings of the Holy Spirit.
Mm,
If the Holy Spirit prompts me or puts someone on my heart, is how I like to say it. I try to stop what I'm doing and text that person if I know they communicate via text. A lot of my friends
mhm.
are older, so they don't all text. So sometimes I'll send them an email, or I'll write them a
Or actually
card,
make a
or
phone
make
call.
a phone call. Yeah. Yeah. Make a phone call. So I have to be honest, that's usually not the first thing on my list, depending on what I'm
Mhm,
doing. But I try to do that. I try to be more intentional about that. And I appreciate it when people do that to me, when I'll get a little note, just thinking about you today. That just like that brings me hope. I feel like, oh, I feel a little special right now,
mhm,
that someone would think about me and then just send me a little note. And I know that just seems silly, but it's just really, I don't know, it's an awareness factor I think that we
mhm,
have, because I'm a very upbeat person. I'm very hopeful. I have a lot of joy in my life. I am intentional about staying positive, but I do have those little moments of
mhm.
hopelessness. And if I'm not careful with those, like I said, I can go down a rabbit hole. And I think having a conversation like this so that we can all be a little more aware of those things. People experience hopelessness at different levels.
Mhm.
And it's not always just devastating, whatever, although there's a lot of that out there. We need to be open to speak life into those people and to encourage them and help them to get their needs met, and find that place of hope. But it's at all different levels, and especially with all the things that have been happening over the last few years.
Mhm. Charlie was saying, I have a rule. I reach out to 2 people a day to check in,
Yeah, that's a great
which
role.
which I know is a really common practice in recovery. It's
Hmm.
like, and when we get into early recovery, it's like call somebody every day. Sometimes you have your
Hmm.
mentor, or it's like call other people that are going through a such similar program. So it's like, but in those situations, that you're going through something, right? And you kind of have the support and
Yeah.
stuff. So it can be difficult. I think that's also why, though, like we pray and we have these habits so
Hmm.
that when
Hmm.
things happen,
Yeah.
like people know us. We're not showing up for things that we normally show up for, or we call 2 people a day, and then we're like automatically kind of put in a position to kind of share what's going on with us,
Yeah.
maybe when we wouldn't have, to begin with.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's such a
That's
weird
good.
balance of like, how do you show up for people in their hopelessness, knowing you can't fix it? But I think that's the way it feels like with a lot of things that we do. It's like when it comes down to it, we don't have a lot of power over what happens. Um,
You're right. You're right.
and yet we still attempt to take good action, um, in the hopes of having a positive result. But the results we really have to give up to. I mean, I think that's where it go. The God is where that
Yeah.
goes, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's true.
I don't know what to
You
do
know,
with it, and I don't know how it happens or why it happens. So it's like, that's yours, God.
yeah. Yeah, my goodness, that's what I've learned to do over the years. And, I find a lot of hope in the pages of my Bible. If I'm having a tough day, even if you ever just wake up and you're just a little off, you just feel like you're, I don't know, in a funk or a little off. Those are the days I really try to grab some extra time to read my Bible, because I know if that little offness can send me in a totally weird direction if I let it.
hmm Charlie says, it's important to have a standing rapport so people know you care all the time, not just in a hard moments, so they reach out when they are struggling as well. Yeah, I think that can be, that makes me think of too how sometimes we don't reach out to people because we think they're struggling worse than we are,
Yeah.
or I think like they're also going through it. So let's say there was a loss and multiple people are impacted by it within our circle. It's
Hmm.
like we can't share how much it's hurting us because we need to be there for other people who are
Right.
hurting more,
Right.
maybe just because they were a little bit closer to that person or they're responding in a more dramatic or visible way, that we kind of push our things aside, or don't feel like we get to share what our experience as well. Somehow it like takes away
Yeah.
from their experience, which there's enough experience to go around
To go around for
for
everybody,
all
for
of us,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
uh,
for sure.
Aaron says, sadly some people just can be present with someone's sadly some people just can be present with someone's hopelessness without trying to tell them what they need to do or trying to fix them. I think that maybe it's can't be present.
Yeah.
But either way, I think
Yeah.
we get it. I always,
Yeah.
it's funny. I'm the one reading, and I feel like I'm the one who struggles reading what's there, or at least
I can
comprehending it while I read it. Maybe is what happens. I don't
That's
know.
funny. I'll put my glasses on, read. I'm just gonna have a glare in my face.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, Aaron says, can't be sorry,
Yeah.
or can't be, and then sorry. Yes.
All good.
Right, right. So a
Mm.
little bit of levity there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Kayla just popped on.
Hey,
Or
Kayla.
hi, Kayla. Kayla
Good to
might
see
have
you.
been there the whole time. She's just
She's
saying
just
hello now.
engaging.
Yeah. Or
Okay.
maybe she just popped in. Who knows? It's good to see you either way.
Yes. Yes, it
We are
is.
we are talking about hope in a hopeless
Mhm.
time.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, go ahead, Tina. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, not really. I just, for just gonna define my hope. For me, it's my salvation and my faith in Jesus.
Mm,
That's where I find hope when I'm really get to that point where I'm like circling the drain.
mm-hmm.
That's where I like put my hands and feet out on the sides and say, nope,
Mm,
I've got a promise that says that this is not for me, and I
yeah.
have hope that this is all going to work out the way it's supposed to, because I was created for something
Mm,
significant and with the purpose. And
yeah.
that's not just for me, that's for every single one of us. And I just have to remind myself sometimes, and I'm reminded in the pages of the Bible as
Mm,
I'm told who I am, how I was created, why I was created. So,
yeah. And I guess another one of those things when it's like when you're in the dark, when you're
yeah,
in the midst of it all, it's sometimes hard to go there. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But yeah.
That's like you said, at the end of the day, we can't save someone else. We
Mm-hmm.
can't we can't take away the hopelessness. We can come alongside and we can encourage and empower and then walk them through what they're going through. But at the end of the day, they have to find their hope.
Yeah.
And that hope comes, I think, from knowing who you are. For every person I've ever met that's lost hope, it's they've lost sight of their significance.
Mm,
And their significance, for all, we're all significant. We're all created for a purpose. And I think sometimes I can remind people of that, but then that I have to choose to understand that you're right. No matter what's happening in this craziness in this moment, I am significant, and I'm choosing to lean on, hopefully in my case, God, or I encourage people to lean on God. I'm not doing that. I'm going to
hmm
understand who I am and I'm going to move forward. So yeah.
Kayla offered up that there is sometimes a lot of guilt in not being able to help them find hope.
That's
Yeah.
true.
But I think, yeah, and I think it is hard, but again, it's just like with any relationship, I say this often, not like I'm some relationship guru, but because I learned this from like my ex, was just, whenever you're in a relationship or you're struggling with how to show up in a relationship, our like responses to want to focus on that relationship. When I think the best thing for me to do is actually to focus on me, so that I can just bring my best self into that situation. And sometimes I'm still going to fall short or whatever, but maybe I can feel a little bit better because, I know that I did my best, I guess. I think
Mm.
sometimes we begin to feel that guilt or that concern when we think like, oh, well, maybe there was this one thing maybe I did have the intuition to call, but I didn't, and that's not our response. Like, it's not our responsibility. You know what I mean? Like, it's not our fault
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
whatever happens because we don't listen to those sorts of things. But I think when we don't, and then maybe something happens or you learn something's a lot more severe than what you thought, then you think like, oh, I should have known, or that was the indicator. And then like that's where the guilt and everything can just kind of, build up inside us.
Well, yeah, it's because of that guilt, I think, that hopelessness can become contagious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we need to be grounded ourselves, so that we can and again, we're not going to take them out of their hopelessness. That's their decision to make.
Right.
But we can speak that life into them and that significance into them so they have the tools to grab hold on to.
Mm-hmm. And hopelessness is something that maybe we have to, I remember in being in helping fields as like kind of doing social work or whatever and even in recovery, it's like don't allow people the dignity of their own experience.
Absolutely.
Like don't rob them from, you can't really, but like I think we try, and I don't think that's our intention, but I think we often do.
Yeah.
Aaron says encouragement is so important. For me, I think it's the most important thing we can do for someone experiencing hopelessness.
Yeah, I agree. It's been my experience as well, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I feel like in thinking about maybe preparation, I think hopelessness is going to happen, period, sometimes regardless of what we're doing. But one of the things, like when you're talking about like reaching to God and stuff, that can be really difficult. And those can be the times when sometimes we don't see God at all, or nothing makes sense. And I think it's helpful that when we are in a better place, more well space, or we're not in that hopelessness, to kind of look back in times that we were experiencing hopelessness and try to see where God was at work, where God was at play. Was God, for me, like in early recovery, God came in the form of like the queers and the drug addicts and the whatever who showed up for me and helped me to recover. Those were the hands of God. That was God. The God that I come to know and understand today was at work at that time and in that moment. And so I think if we're able to kind of like begin to see our hopelessness different in the past, and it can kind of change it. And hopefully when we're going through our hopelessness now, it might be something that we can deal with. Hopefully, we might be able to approach it with a little bit more faith, or hope, because we've seen over and over and over and over that when I was in this moment, when I felt this way, this was still happening. And the hard part is that this too shall pass, which again is a hard thing to accept when you're going through it.
Right.
Kayla has a couple comments. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, love all the interaction. Kayla says, I think I needed to hear the dignity comment that hit home. Kayla also says, I think in the flesh we struggle because sometimes we can't see what God was doing until after the storm, whereas in the spirit we are supposed to walk in faith. Yep. That's I think why we have to be mindful of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to create, or what we think is best, right?
Yeah.
Aaron says, yeah, I agree. I often feel abandoned by God in the midst of my hopelessness. So looking back on times God has been there for me in the past is a good reminder. Again, it's one of those things like if you can, right? If you can pull it from the past, which can be so hard to do when you're in that space.
It is hard. There's lots of stories in the Bible about that. Do you mind if I just share a little Tina version of a story?
Yeah.
So there's I don't know if you guys know, I'm an Old Testament girl. And in this story of Abraham, his nephew Lot has just gotten taken away by marauders, and he had to take his servants and his folks and go in and save his nephew, come out of all that. He did all that, and he's in his tent, and he's crying out to God and complaining and saying, oh my gosh, this has been a horrible thing, and I'm not even going to have an heir, because at this point Sarah hadn't had a child, and what is all this even about? I don't even understand what this is all about. And it was when I read that passage, I'm like, yeah, what is this even all about? None of this stuff that I thought was going to happen for my life is going to happen. And then the next passage says, and God said to Abraham, come out of your tent. And Abraham stepped out of the tent, and he looked up, and God reiterated to him the promise he put on his heart, that he would have descendants that would outnumber the stars. And as I was reading that, I'm like, okay, there's something here for me. And then I realized Abraham had to step out from under his circumstance, which was his tent, so that God could reiterate to him the moment and the promise that he put in his heart. And I realized that tent for Abraham represented all that hopelessness that he had, because back in that day, if you didn't have heirs, it didn't matter what else you had to have heirs. And God had promised him years and years before, when Sarah was in her prime, that they were going to have descendants. And so here he is, kind of hanging out with Lot, thinking, well, maybe it's Lot, maybe it's whatever. He's my family. I'm going to do whatever. I'm even going to pull him out of this crazy situation I told him not to get himself into. And so here he is in this weakest moment. I don't have any sons. The only kid that I have that's even close to being a relative, I had to go out and do all this stuff for. So here I am. I'm getting old. And God said, come on out of there. Come on out of there. And let me reiterate to you what it is that I have for you in this moment. And that little paraphrase of that story, because it's like chapters.
Right.
It refreshes me sometimes when I'm really having a hard time, when my business closed during COVID.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck? My whole livelihood just like, I woke up one day and it was gone. It's like, what is that all about?
Yeah. So, it's like, what if something else is true, right? Exactly. What if something else is going on? Kayla says, oh, Tina, that is good. I need the faith of Joseph. Yeah. Or I think, Rihanna, she found love in a hopeless place. So maybe reaching for love could help.
Is that a song? I don't think I've heard it, but I think I remember you telling me about it.
Yes, it's a Rihanna song. It's a lyric in a song that Rihanna sings. She found love in a hopeless place. So
I found love in a hopeless place every day. His name is Jesus.
Right. Well, and Aaron is laughing out loud with the crying emoji. Kayla as well. Yeah. Yes, love in a hopeless place.
Yeah.
Well, we are right about at our 45-minute mark. So I want to thank everyone for joining us this week. And thank you so much, Aaron, for the topic. It was really good. Really great, led for a great conversation this week. And thank you for sharing, for bringing that up to us. In whatever vulnerability that might have taken to put in the comments during the episode. But I think it made for a really great conversation. For folks who are new to this, I just putting out, you're either listening to us on a podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts at Splintered Grace, but we also go live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch every Thursday at 5:30 p.m.
Not Monday.
Not Monday, but Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So if you'd like to join us live, if you're listening, you're hearing all these rad people who are, sharing with us their thoughts and their questions. And if you'd like to participate, the more the merrier. So do reach out to us. If you're listening to this or watching this after the fact, feel free to reach out to us. You can direct message us, you can make comments in the videos or wherever, and we'll do our best to try to reach back out to you. We love hearing from you, and we love that you join us each week. And even if you don't ever tell us that you're listening, keep doing it. We are
Yeah, we're
totally cool
happy
with
that
it.
you're here. Yeah. Yeah.
If you are on Facebook, they have this thing there where you click the bell. If you make sure you want to click the bell, because just because you follow us and like us doesn't mean you're going to get a notification. So click that bell, and they'll let you know every time we go live. I know that's all the logistical stuff.
Yeah.
Well, some of it.
The
If you'd
bulk
like
of it.
to, right? Yeah, if you'd like to support Splintered Grace in another way, we do have merch, and you also could potentially, contribute via Venmo or Patreon, all that fun stuff. You can just check out the links in the description if you want to get involved with the podcast in some form or another. We're also exploring potentially having guests. So if you think you might like to be a guest, let us know. Let us know your thoughts and ideas of what that conversation might look like, or if you think there's someone else we should consider having guests for. I know I'm like going on, but I'm like, we're
Okay.
hoping to do that maybe because in the month of November, Tina and I are actually going to be in the same space. And so
Yay! Same
I know I
physical
can't wait.
location.
I'm excited about that.
Me too.
So I'm excited that we would be able to. So we're thinking during that 4 weeks that maybe we'll have some guests or just do things a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for all the hearts from everyone, Charlie, Aaron, and Herding Cats for you. It's great to
Yay.
see you on here. And Kayla says, Aaron Matthew, you should be a guest. I think that's a great idea.
Oh, me too.
So Tina, do you want to actually now for sure say goodbye for us?
You guys are awesome. I just thank you for allowing us this opportunity to have a conversation together. And then with you guys, when you chime in, it just makes our day. We are better because of you guys. Thanks for joining us. Log in with us again next week.
Bye-bye. Splintered Grace Podcast is brought to you by A Queer Chaplain. Follow us on all of our social media, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at A Queer Chaplain. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe, comment, like, and share. Feel free to tip us at Venmo, Bonnie Violet, and support monthly on Patreon. The song is original by Steven Sandnoff, The Chasm Between Us. Rest in peace, Steven. Hey, how's it going? Bonnie Violet here. I'm a trans femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, and digital chaplain. And in case you didn't know, I could really use your support. Engage, rate, subscribe, follow, comment, share this episode, book me to keynote, panel, guest on your show, or officiate your wedding or memorial, in or out of drag, collaborate, join the team, be a guest, make a pitch, sponsor an episode, join my Patreon, send me a tip on Venmo or PayPal. Just do something. Thank you so much for your continued support. Check out the links in the description.